Thanks. Again, same picture, but it'll transition out soon. So ACP 176, all about C-chain fees. I'm going to go a little bit into why fees are important on blockchains. Some people may think that's obvious. Some people might not. So it's kind of a quick background. And then I'm going to kind of dive into what we saw with the activation of ACP 176 and how things work. So quick question, why are fees needed at all? Every user has always asked, I just want to issue my transaction. I want to do my swap. I don't want to pay fees. Why do I have to pay fees? For blockchains, in a permissionless environment, we have to have some rate limiting mechanism, some way of preventing a DOS of the network, and we use fees for that. So there are alternative forms for rate limiting transactions, but they are typically either centralized, not robust, or really just fees, but with extra steps. So as an example, this is something that someone early at Ava Labs continually suggested to me, like this would just be such a nice UX. If the user, just allow them 5 transactions for free per day. It'll be great. No, and it's, well, okay, how do you define user? If the user is an address, anyone can make a new address, you're just going to get DOSed. If your user is Bob because I KYC'd them, then you're a centralized system. So really, this kind of mechanisms for free transactions based off of users is not really workable. And there are some other blockchains that have said, well, my user has just purchased like some percentage of block space, and from that point on, I can issue as many transactions as I want through that block space. But it's really just fees with extra steps, right? Like I already had to buy the space up front, and you can kind of utilize those credits, but it's kind of like a reserve versus on-demand fee model, really. So fees are required for us, and so we're going to do a little quick Econ 101 fee market stuff. So hopefully this isn't a unexpected graph for anybody, but we can see here on the red is our supply curve, and the demand is our blue curve. And when supply equals demand in a competitive market, that is where your price and your kind of units or quantity aligns. So this is the standard kind of Econ 101 fee market. In blockchains, it's a little bit different, but it's this is very similar in that the gas target is the supply, but it's a vertical line. So if you took Econ, this is a completely inelastic supply curve, and you have some gas demand, right? And the gas demand, as a system designer, you can never actually know what it's going to be, right? So in this world, our gas demand is some weird thing. I don't know, there was a blip here. Maybe that's because of some NFT mint that if gas prices are higher, I don't know. Anyways, it goes something like this. And essentially what we want to say is if the demand changes, we want to take that in and modify our pricing. So we want to continually update our prices until we're back to this steady state of accurately clearing the usage. So this is kind of our congestion pricing, traditional pricing blockchain market. So this is kind of how the blockchain fees work for us from just like a Econ 101 perspective. If we want to go into specific properties of fees, I've listed out a bunch of things here. We want users to be able to easily know the cost of issuing a transaction. We don't want them to have to do some really complex historical analysis of, oh, what are people paying recently, and do some weighted, they should just get a number. We also want the actual amount of computation to actually hit the target computation. So when Aran is talking about we want to make sure that the queue is always full and always executing, we need to make sure that our prices accurately fill that queue. If the queue is saying the prices are much higher than they really should be, then that queue won't fill up. And similarly, if the prices are much too low, then the queue ends up getting overfilled. So we want to actually really nail the target amount of computation. One kind of interesting subtle part here, and some people might actually think that this isn't true, just if you look at the data, but the way that these systems are designed, it must be. The actual gas price should be independent to the price of the asset. So if the price of a Vox or AVAX, depending on who you are, 10x's, then the gas price in kind of true value, whether it's like USD or whatever your native, like how you think about money, that should not immediately 10x the price of gas. In practice, if there's a huge volatility move, then people end up rebalancing a bunch of stuff and gas price will also correspondingly spike. But you shouldn't, that shouldn't be baked into the fee mechanism. The fee mechanism needs to be able to support bursts of demand. So essentially, if so you have some NFT mint drop, you want to kind of be a little bit flexible. You want to add a little bit of capacity, but you don't want to run away with things. So the mechanism should be bounding the computation over a time window. And then this is a little bit of a Avalanche specific part. The mechanism needs to be based off of time, not really based off of blocks. So a lot of people will say, oh, I have some block gas limit. If the gas limit is full, that means that I'm fully utilizing my gas. If the gas limit isn't full, then I'm, have free space. That's not really how it works. So if you look at something like the C-Chain Explorer, you may say, oh, hey, these blocks, they aren't like being full, therefore the fee should be going down. That's not exactly how it works because Avalanche block production can happen asynchronously. So you can have blocks issued with the same timestamp or a significantly delayed timestamp. And so we want to really meter as kind of a wall clock time mechanism. So if we just look around at a couple different fee mechanisms, Bitcoin, very simple, first price auction, doesn't provide us a lot of these properties. What it does provide is the real price of Bitcoin doesn't impact the price of kind of the execution or state. And it does hard bound the amount of computation. If you look at 1559 in Ethereum, this introduces bursts of demand. So the gas limit is now bigger than the gas target. And it's very easy to know what the price is if you just look at the base fee. 4844, which is their blob fees, actually fix kind of a regression, or not a regression, but a bug in 1559 where the computation isn't actually hitting the target. And then if we look at the pre-ACP 176, we had these properties, but the true amount of computation was still not hit. We had kind of the same bug that 1559 had. So with 176, we kind of nailed all of these components, and so we're all very happy with the properties that 176 gives. There's additional properties in here, like the ability to mathematically analyze the bounds and stuff, which are very critical for SAE. But as far as the actual core pricing mechanism, these are the kind of the components that we care about. So this is the core part of ACP 176. So essentially, the price is equal to the exponentiation of the excess over a constant smoothing factor. So this excess gas consumed is essentially saying, if I'm targeting, say, 1 million gas per second to be executed, I'm currently executing 2 million gas per second, my excess is increasing by 1 million gas per second. So because I'm running over target, the price is going to be increasing, and the price is going to be increasing exponentially. Similarly, the constant here ends up impacting the kind of reactivity of the price. So when we set ACP 176, we wanted to limit the rate of change of the fee mechanism to double or half every minute. So you have kind of these fixed bounds on how reactive it is. What ends up actually happening, which is kind of interesting, is you can get this kind of sinusoidal behavior. So if k is set too small, then the sinusoidal is very aggressive. But if k is set too large, then it isn't really reactive. So you kind of want to hit this nice little curve. And we'll see that with some graphs later. Now, so we can see here, this is real mainnet data of actually this morning. So this dashed line in the middle is our target amount of gas. So this is really kind of like what we consistently utilize. This top dashed is the maximum allowed computation that we will do. So keep in mind, going back to the properties, we want to have a guaranteed maximum amount of compute that we'll do. So this top dashed line is the maximum. And we can see here that there was a demand increase. So when the demand increase happened, more users started issuing transactions, which caused the consumed gas per second to increase. And then we can see the demand decrease when we were now under the target. So if we look at some of the other kind of components to this ACP, we can look at the excess. So we can see correspondingly to the demand increase, the excess started increasing. And you can see it started increasing at the same time that we kind of went above target. And then when we cross under target, it starts decreasing back to the point that we kind of equalize. Because the price is determined just based off of excess, you can see immediately the price starts to increase until we kind of get back to a steady state, and then it decreases again back to the previous price. So this is how the pricing is actually performed on the network. A very interesting thing is the capacity. So this is how our block limit differs from, say, something like Ethereum. We maintain this block capacity. And you'll notice during this that the capacity was never actually consistently exhausted. This means that there weren't actually enough transactions in the mempool to limit block building. So the priority fees paid by transactions during this fee increase were not required at all. So if anyone is like consistently seeing, oh, hey, my transactions are paying some priority fee, they oftentimes don't need to, and you're just burning money for no reason. So this is something that wallets oftentimes misconfigure. And so I have been very much working with Core and other people to try to remedy this. So trying to fix it, but this is, at the end of the day, a kind of wallet user level thing of stop burning money you don't need to burn. So if there's one takeaway from this talk, it is set your priority fees right because you're burning money for no reason. When we look at the MapleStory launch, so this happened last week, we can see that the capacity actually did bottom out. So during this kind of price spike, the price went up for gas by a factor of 2,500x, so 2,500x. During that period, capacity was exhausted for about 6 minutes. So during 6 minutes, users did need to specify a priority fee if they wanted to get included, but the fee spiked by 2,500x, right? So normally that is not a usual kind of fee modification, fee change that's happening. So really the priority fees, unless you're trying to really snipe some like NFT mint or things like that, you really probably don't need to be specifying much, if any, priority fee. So please don't pay fees you don't have to. So if you look through the blockchain, you'll see a lot of usage of legacy transactions. These legacy transactions will just always pay the full fee that they specify rather than using the 1559 compatible transactions. And then you'll see some 1559 transactions just specify a large priority fee for no reason. If you really think about it mathematically, ACP 176 essentially works to minimize the required priority fee all the time. So you only ever need to specify priority fee if the fee is increasing rapidly. Whenever I use the C chain, I almost always set the max priority fee to the minimum allowed amount of one way or one AutoAvox if you're being Avalanche maxi about it. And it will get in almost 100% of the time immediately. There's really almost no reason to burn any additional money. You do have to set it to at least one for random Ethereum compatibility stuff, but you know, we can eat that one AutoAvox per gas, I think. So when we look into the actual deployment of ACP 176, I'd be interested to see if you could kind of guess as to when ACP-176 may have been activated. It is not in February 2025. It is around here. And the reason for that is because with 176, we removed the minimum gas fee. So we went kind of all in on this dynamic pricing mechanism, which means that we always will absolutely nail this target. And that's just kind of through the properties of our pricing model, which is why we've seen kind of a big uptick in gas usage and kind of activity since the Octane activation. Yeah, so I'm extremely happy with this. You know, we can see like previously it was kind of bounded at the same amount, but we never really kind of hit it consistently. But now we will. We can additionally see the gas costs that have changed. So again, if we're playing Where's Waldo, it's about there, where we go from fees kind of all over the place, high, to essentially none. This is the median fee, and if we look at the average fee, it's a little bit less pronounced. And the reason for that is because wallets are still passing in priority fees, even though they don't need to, and burning money. So I really want this graph to look like this graph. So I need you guys to specify no priority fees unless it's needed. If you know it, go for it. But I want people to not burn money for no reason. So with that, are there any questions, comments, concerns?
Questions for Stephen? Anyone? No? Everyone understands the Octane upgrade? Yeah? Awesome. Can I get a round of applause for Stephen, please?